What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Today we have on Derrick from Reef Automation. How you doing, Derrick?
How's it going, buddy?
Not too bad, thanks. So today we figured it would be fun to talk about and dig into the fact is you messing with your tank, messing up your tank. Now I have a wonderful example of me doing this the other day with a bit of a excessively high elk swing in my tank. So that was my own stupidity. So that definitely happens. Quick backstory if you guys haven't watched my Monday video. Basically, I was on a plane flying out of town for work for the day, and I noticed my elk was pretty low, so I opened my Fusion app. Now, first thing to note, I had 1 bar service. I should probably not have been messing with my tank. And on an airplane, nevertheless, so I'm like, click it open, turn my dose on, counted to about 60 to let it dose a bunch, and put it back to auto. I was like, oh yeah, that's all good. Didn't think about it. Came home later that night, looked at it, was still on. I was like, so that sucked.
Oh,
and that dosed about 3.8 liters of alkalinity to my tank, whatever was left in that container. And my elk went from 7.8 to 14.8. So a 7 DKH swing was pretty hardcore. Now, thankfully, well, when I got home that night, I noticed, and I did like a 6 bucket water change, basically. And the next day I did like a 50 gallon water change. And that brought my elk down to around 11, which is like the high end of normal range. And then I let it drop natural over the next 2 days, and now it's around 8 point something. It's back to like a happy range. So far, there's been 0 fallout, so that's been awesome. Now I'm hoping that there's no long-term effects, but don't mess with your tank when you have really crappy data, or ideally when you can't see it. Even better.
Yeah, I don't think you should be dosing when you're away from your house manually at any point in time, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's probably true. What I should do really is do like some kind of a virtual outlet would do a set period of time, then flick itself back over. That should be like a future fix for when I have the urge from remotely.
Yeah, do you have what are you using? Apex or Hydros
Yeah,
for that?
that was with the dose.
Oh, yeah.
They really need a button
a
that
when
just says
statement.
dose this
And then if
much.
it's been on.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah, you can do that. There is a way to do that too.
yeah,
You make a preset, and then you can dose exactly how much you want.
yeah, I think there'll be like a virtual outlet to like dose 100 mils or something. Safer than a couple liters, you know.
Yeah.
I know. So that was my fun of messing with my tank when I shouldn't have been. Now, another big thing is, I know everyone hears like keep your hands out of the tank, and not a lot of people actually do it. I know everyone's really bad, at least when you're a new reef keeper. I know my first couple years, my hands were in the tank every single day. He's like, oh, that frag fell. Oh, that fell. Your hands are in there and you're tweaking things. You're moving things back. And like these days, something falls. I'm like, I'll get to it later in the week. And like 2 weeks later, I'll finally fix it. But I think my tank is happier for it. I think not having your hands in there, messing with your tank every day goes a long way for adding more stability and keeping more of a happy tank. So I do think there's a lot to be said about keeping the hands out and messing with it less. What do you think?
Well, I think the one thing I see a lot, and it's mainly new reefers, is they're always looking at their temperature, and they're always looking at pH, things that fluctuate a lot in real life in the ocean. It's interesting. I see so many posts about how someone's trying to get something accomplished, and they're comparing one thermostat at 79 and one at 78, and they're doing all kinds of crazy things. And for I don't know how many years I've been doing this, I have not once, and maybe you can disagree or other people on the channel, I have not once ever seen anything ill happen to not only my fish but my coral with 2-3 degree drops or 2-3 degree increases. And when that happens, if it's significant and quick, yeah, that might cause something. But if it's something over a period of a few hours, typically, unless it's really high, unless it's like 85, let's say, you generally don't see many issues at all. I generally don't even look at the thermostat anymore unless it goes like to 72 or 85. I'm not even looking at it ever.
Yeah, 85 to me sounds crazy high. In my mind, like 80, 81's hot. But like, what do you keep your tanks at?
I keep my 300-gallon tank with just fish at about 80, and I keep my reef tank at about 78
Okay. Yeah.
generally. And
70 is
again,
a happy.
when I do water changes on my 300,
Mm,
generally the water's coming from my garage or it's coming from a place where the water is much warmer. And, the degree, it goes up like to 82 or 83 for a period of maybe 2 hours because I have a chiller and then it brings it back down.
yeah.
And there's zero effects. I mean, there really is. Um, so again, it's more of the things that people get really crazy about that cause problems in your tank. So, for instance, if you're off by a degree or your fish tank goes down a degree, and then you put a heater in, and you don't set up the heater properly, and you heat up your tank, and it goes to 90, you know that's a problem,
Yeah.
obviously. So I've always been a big proponent with reefing to just not touch my tanks unless there's a significant alarm,
Yeah.
unless there's a significant increase of something. Otherwise, I just don't touch it. And everything is stable, and it's stable because I don't touch it.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know.
So this one comment I want to pull from the chat, Brandon Scott. What actually happens to the chemistry wise when you're handsy with your tank? The last 2 years, buckets of hand sanitizer likely, and that was probably one of the biggest things I'm going to say too. Like one, the oils off your hands, everything that actually goes into the tank is going to affect stuff, right? And if your hands are in there every day, it's just going to build up and build up over time. And the last 2 years, that's probably hand sanitizer, everything else going in your tank. And again, that's all aiding to kind of reduce instability or adding in stuff you don't necessarily want in your tank. So the more you keep your hands out, the happier things tend to be.
Well, if you ever notice, if you put your hands in the tank, look at your skimmer. I mean, that pretty much will tell you. If you put your hands in your tank, you notice your skimmer just stops, which is generally what happens when you put your hands in it due to oils and so forth. Your skimmer just stops. The good news is, however, um, most of us that have not experienced, I'm sorry, established tanks, putting your hands in isn't going to do anything because there's such a nice high bacterial load, and the cycle has been, you know, advanced so well, and you got all your filters, let's say, that if you put your hands in the tank, generally it's not going to cause much of an issue. Now, if you have a 5-gallon tank, then yeah, that's probably going to be a problem. So I would limit, if you have a nano tank, I would definitely limit putting your hands in without, you know, making sure your hands are really nice and clean. But if you have a large tank, like 100, even a 50, and you put your hands in there once or twice a week, it's not gonna do anything.
Now,
Um,
I'm going to caveat that a little bit.
okay.
Again, rinsing off your hands, washing your hands off, don't putting, soap up your hands and dunk them in. That also makes a big difference too, right? I generally just use water when I rinse them off, but doing that beforehand, because if you're a mechanic, you're working on your car, what oils, like who knows what you're putting into your tank? And that's one of the big considerations, like in my mind, right? Like I sit on a computer all day, so it's pretty low risk here. But over time, that stuff definitely can build up. Now, so that's one aspect of messing with your tank is sticking your hands in, moving, rearranging every frag that falls over, a snail knocks over. Where if, you leave it, once a week you go in there instead of daily, like that does go quite a long ways. Like I have seen some people that never put their hands in the tank. They use those big crazy arm gloves or they use the tongs.
Yep.
And those tanks tend to look phenomenal. And, I attribute a chunk of that not to adding in whatever known contaminants you're potentially adding.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a small story here. I think I told this on one of my live streams. Um, but a couple months, maybe 6 months ago, my fuel pump on my car broke.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, most fuel pumps and most of the newer cars are in the back seat, and you have to take it out, and it's kind of a pain. So, anyways, I took it out, and there was a good fume throughout the garage of this fuel smell. Now, I thought nothing of it, because I had the doors open and I had the garage open. I was like, this is not going to be an issue. My fish tank behind me here resides in my garage. So I was like, yeah, it's not going to be an issue. So a couple days later, I noticed on specifically my soft corals were dying. They just started dying all of a sudden. And I'm like, could this be due to the fuel fumes? So I did a water change, and then everything started to be fine again. So, like you mentioned, with working with automotive, I mean, even fumes seems to be something I didn't realize could affect it if it's not properly vented. You know?
Yeah, I mean, but if your tank is actually in your garage, which actually it is, not you mention it, is it the one that's behind you or your other one?
Correct. This one
Yeah.
is my reef tank. It's in my garage.
Okay, so you got to think as your wave makers are making all that turbulation on the surface, that is your gas exchange. So if you do have, engines running and all those fumes, they would be sucked in. It's actually a good consideration, right? Like if you are working on your car doing stuff, like it probably is worth having some kind of little plastic wrap or cover or something to like, or just open a garage door. It's not a bazillion
Yeah,
degrees in Arizona.
I mean, I've never had an issue with this tank since I've had it in there with the cars being, right there. I do have my cabinet and everything kind of closed off, so fumes can't really get in there.
Mm.
But I have a lot of ventilation in there. I have an air conditioning system in there. I have fans in there. I have, a number of things that provide, you know, the CO2, I guess, is probably coming from the car, right? CO2. Um, and it doesn't seem to be an issue, at least in my tank. Um, but yeah, the fuel fumes, yeah, that did something. I don't know how.
Yeah. Okay. So now, interesting one for you, since I know you're hardcore into the automation as well. Do you think
Yes.
having basically everything automated on your tank makes you mess with it less because you don't have to?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of one of the reasons I'm happy to be on the stream with you because messing with the tanks is my number one goal to avoid. That's why I started my channel. That's why I started teaching people, automation tips and tricks. That's why we have, why I do this, why I enjoy teaching people. Because it then gets you away from what we discussed a little earlier, and that's touching your tank, that's messing with your temperature, that's messing with all this stuff, messing with chemicals. When you can automate things, when you can make things do it on its own, and you trust it enough to do it on its own, I can tell you guys, I have 3 tanks. I rarely touch them. I mean, I clean them, and that's pretty much it. I mean, this tank behind you, I've had running for a little bit over a year and a half, and you can see kind of the coral growth I have. I don't touch it. I mean, I don't. So, I mean, I have a couple people that are coming by to get some coral from me. It just grows like crazy. I can't keep track of it. That's the only thing I ever do is cut coral, and that's all I ever do,
When's the last time you had your hands in
which
the
is
tank?
awesome. I mean, I put my hands in my tank when I cut coral. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I find such a big difference. Like, 6, 7 years ago, the earlier days of reefing, they'd be in there daily. Or now it's just like, yeah, I'll fix that. And eventually, like 2 weeks later, you finally like pick it up. And yeah, it's
Yeah, I
terrible.
got some acros that just keep falling on the ground, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly right.
And what's funny is they start growing. That's what happens. It's just like the ocean. You get broken coral, you get coral spawning, and they just grow. And I'm cool with that.
Okay, so all right? So what's your thoughts on messing with it in respect to chasing numbers or chasing parameters? Do you try and hyper dial in something, or you're like, yeah, within this general range is fine?
So my opinion has always been as such, and I've also mentioned this on my videos, is if things are growing and things look healthy, I don't touch a single thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, I can watch your channel, right? I can watch other people's channels, and they have great channels on how to boost your alkalinity or how to boost your pH, right? I think you've had a number of videos on how to boost your pH, right? My pH is around 8.2, which is fantastic. But again, I had to do things to get it to 8.2. I have calc, I make sure that I don't have a lot of, surrounding air getting into my sump, stuff like that. But anyway, it's at 8.2, and my corals are super healthy. They're super colorful. There's, everything's good. Obviously, guys, I do a lot. It's not just my pH. But the point I'm making is if someone comes on there and says, I think Jake was just on here, he did a video a long time ago about getting your pH to 8.4 and seeing some just crazy results, right? Which I totally agree with him. But it goes back to that same thing. When I look at my tank, if everything looks healthy and everything looks good, you could put out 17,000 videos saying, oh, you need to raise your pH. I'm not going to do it,
Do you know?
because I see everything is doing so well.
Do you know what's kind of funny is all
Yeah.
this effort that I put into raising pH. Now looking at like my water box peninsula, there's corals that are almost growing too fast and trying to grow into each other. So now I'm almost like, should I like pull all this stuff back and lower the pH to slow the growth so I don't have to worry about fragging stuff as much? Like it's kind of a weird, funny thing to transition into after a while.
And it's interesting you say that because for an average reefer, guys, I don't think it's important to have this amount of growth unless you're selling it, unless you're growing it in a way to make money off of it. I don't understand the reasoning otherwise, other than to have a healthy tank, right?
Yeah. Well,
The overgrowth, while it's awesome, it presents more and more challenges down the road.
For sure.
How am I gonna? You're gonna have corals touching each other. You're gonna have to cut corals. You're gonna have to do all kinds of fun stuff, and you're gonna have to find people to get your corals. And it's just, for me, it's more of a nightmare than that. So
I'm
yes,
gonna
you're gonna
say
get a lot more growth, but I don't know if it's necessary for an average reefer to get that type.
yeah, I'm gonna say it kind of makes sense for the first year or two of a tank, where if you have a bunch of little tiny twigs all over the place, you want to grow and you want to fill in. But eventually, there's going to be that point where it grows too much and it's just too much work you're creating for yourself, right? So if it's, a big tank full of tiny frags, then yeah, for sure, I can see wanting the higher growth. But yeah, eventually it catches up.
Yeah, Brandon Scott says he likes to trade. So I love the trade too. But the problem again is when you have a tank that's over flooded. Yes, you cut your corals to give to someone. Well, guess what? They're going to give you one now. So then you're going to just exasperate the issue. So
you need a second tank.
I mean, that's why I have a second tank, right? And I wish I had a frag tank where I can put stuff in. But the original comment that I made still stands. If everything looks healthy, and I watch a YouTube video or I see an article about something that says, hey, you should try this, you're going to get better color, or you're going to get this, or something's going to happen, I kind of ignore it, honestly. It's kind of like, oh, cool, maybe I can give this information to a new reefer, right? But for myself, it's not something I'm going to use because everything is doing well. And I recommend anybody out there to take that advice for themselves. If they've been doing it for a long time, let's say they have a 5-year-old tank. That's a pretty old tank. And everything looks fantastic, right? And someone comes out with some new solution, a new way to dose, a new way to do something, I would just ignore it if your tank's doing so well. That's just, again, my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's true. Now, some people talk about it's great to bank frags as well. Like if you have like any buddies that are local, always good to give them frags of your favorite corals, because if you ever lose it, you can get it back. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Brand,
I just don't want to see people. I just don't like seeing or want to see people trying new things because they saw something online or they saw an article online or somewhere and crashing their tank that's been doing so well.
Now,
which is the whole point of this stream, is messing with your tank when you don't need to.
I agree. And that goes for equipment too. Like I know, my earlier days of YouTube stuff, like I mess with my tank way too much. Part of it's to test out new things, try different things for video. But at the same time, like my tank suffered to an extent from that. Like there's parts that were stunted because I'm constantly messing with it rather than just letting it be, right? And that was one of the reasons that eventually led me to get a second tank, so I can mess with one more and leave the main one alone, which I do now. So I'm not completely doing it. But that, even just changing, every time you change a piece of gear, right, that's going to change something with the balance of your tank. And it's going to take a while for things to settle and get back to its groove again. And that's something you got to consider when you're constantly messing with it, right? And constantly changing and trying different stuff.
I'm the worst person to even comment on this, but I have obviously just tons and tons of equipment of different things. And I've replaced my equipment. I can't count how many times. I've replaced my lights probably 4 times. I've probably replaced pumps. I don't know how many times. And it's all in probably the similar fashion that you are. It's all to help people with YouTube and, bring the message out there. Hey, this is good. This isn't so good. Hey, this will work really well for you. But in order to do that, unfortunately, you have to try it. You can't just open the box and go, oh, this fancy new toy is awesome, and not use it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really careful about that. when I got my Mastertronic, I was like, I'm so excited to get the Mastertronic. But it's just a tester, right? It's not going to technically affect your tank, and that's the key here. When you have a big upgrade like replacing pumps or replacing tubing or replacing, I'm always very careful, to try to get it as close to matching as possible. And then when I say close to matching, I mean maybe the flow rate, I keep it the same, and then I bump it up over time instead of just, gung ho all of a sudden.
Yeah. So on that note, you've had the Mastertronic for a long time. How do you like it?
I have two of them now.
So you like it?
And yes, I've been very happy with it. I did a video or a live stream, I think, where I compared them to the other brick in the garbage. But I did test them, and I'm finding that the Mastertronic doesn't leak, which is great. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
that's the bar. That's your bar of being good, is it doesn't leak.
Yeah. And the secondary to that, and probably the most important thing, is the software works. I mean, it works. I don't know about you with your Mastertronic and Alcatronic, but when I open the software, yes, it's a little slow, but it works. I mean, yeah. I get the information I need. I push a button, it does what it's supposed to do. I get notifications when something's low, unlike some other products, which somehow, some way, you got notifications from it, and I never did. And I always chalked it up to the West Coast server. Like, I always thought it was something in the West Coast of the United States that was causing that.
Yeah. Have you verified the accuracy and precision of the Mastertronic? I did once with an ICP test that I sent in, and I noted what my values were, and they were pretty close. They weren't exact, but they were close enough that I was happy.
I can tell you I test iodine with mine, and I have found that to not be so accurate, honestly. I've tested it against multiple testing procedures.
For whatever reason, I feel like iodine would be a bit questionable by the time it takes that couple weeks to actually get to the ICP machine. But I don't know why, but I feel like
the iodine was way off with my ICP.
Yep.
And it was also way off when I did a manual test using the same reagents. The nitrate has been pretty much spot on with every nitrate test that I test. I test with phosphates. Phosphates has been dead on every time. I don't test anything else. So
fair enough.
Was it Jake that, I don't know if that's Jake actually typing, but the precision I would say is perfect. I did like 3 or 4 tests in a row, and they were almost identical. They were actually identical on nitrates. There was 0 fluctuation between 3 tests in a row. But in terms of accuracy, I would say, like Devin said, it's really close. It's not exactly the same as ICP, but the iodine test needs a lot of work. That's what I would say.
Never tried the iodine one. But for the rest of the parameters, I've been happy with mine. I also, like, because I have the Trident as well, and I know, like, this could just be I need to recalibrate. This is the Alcatronic.
Trident all of a sudden.
Anyways, it's about 0.2 off, which is probably I need to calibrate it, but they're almost always identically the same offset. Realistically, I probably just need to calibrate it. But at the same time, I don't necessarily, even if it was 0.1 or 2 off, I don't necessarily care as long as it's consistently that, right? Because at the end of the day, like, I don't really care about the specific number. I care about the trends. Is it stable? Is it going up or down?
Absolutely.
Like, that's all I care about at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you like the Trident, by the way? I never asked you.
That's good. It's been easy. Does its thing. I kind of use that in the Alcatronic Mastertronic, keep each other honest, and so far they've been good.
It's been, I've had the Trident since day one, and I know all these people that have had issues with it, and I haven't had a single issue with it, and it does exactly what I want it to do.
Yeah. Yes.
I love it.
Okay, so Jake
says I also love the Mastertronic.
Yeah. So Jake says he's still a few years off from handing off auto testing calcium manganese. So I have Alcatronic, Mastertronic, and Trident all in one tank, and they've been keeping each other honest. And honestly, they've, for the last so many months, 4 or 5 months, however long I've had the Trident, I don't remember, but they've been close enough that I haven't worried about it. And yes, it's overkill having 2 auto testers, but seeing that they're basically
no, it's not
in the same bolt. Okay, fine, it's good, but they keep each other honest, right? If you don't want to test, then if one of them's out of whack, then that's a sign, okay, I need to go look at my tank and double check it. But if they're both consistently within the same ballpark of each other, then you know you're good, right?
Well, like you said, I think it's not necessarily the number, it's the trends. So to Jake's comment, I wouldn't really care about what the values are per se. Maybe up front, I would test it manually and see kind of where it's at. But after that, I would just make sure that the trends aren't going crazy, right?
Yeah.
I would make sure your alkalinity isn't going up significantly. And then I would say, yes, we need to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's what's so great about auto testers is they give you that freedom of not necessarily needing to know the value, but knowing what's going on. And that's the biggest thing about it.
Yeah.
So
No, the first few months, I definitely was a lot more skeptical, and I spot checked it a lot more frequently. But after like having them for a couple of years, like I have pretty high confidence in them. And if the result is as expected or in my regular range, I don't worry about it. If it's completely out of whack, then yes, I will look into it and I will dig a bit more. But for the most part, they've been fairly reliable to me. And I mean, of course, you want to audit or not recalibrate it once in a while, right? You know, make sure you maintain it and all that type of stuff. Like if you never replace the tubing, if you never calibrate the pH probe, it's going to eventually drift a little bit, right? So it's that other part kind of adds up eventually.
yes, Jake, I recommend highly to everyone watching that they have as much gear as possible. And if you don't know how much gear you need, come to my house and I will show you how much gear you need to run a reef tank.
And Jake will happily show you how much gear you don't need to run a reef tank. You guys are complete
Right, I
opposites
know,
there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
Yours is overkill. I mean, I'm a gear junkie too, but I work in tech. I love the tech.
It's not a right comment. It's stupid.
The tech side for me is almost a hobby in itself that's like coincides with the reef tank. So do you need a lot of this stuff? No. But do I have fun playing with it? Yes. So take it with a grain of salt.
Well, for those that don't know me, I'm a programmer. That's what I've been doing for my whole life, and I just love programming. I love making things happen with multiple things, whether or not it's electronics or just a computer program. Regardless like you said, regardless if I had no gear, I would still create something that would make my life easier with my reef tank. I would have to.
Yeah.
It's just in me to do it,
I really appreciate a low tech, very simple system, but I'm just drawn to tech and automation. Like I just have more fun with it. So, but I appreciate the super simple, happy, you don't have to worry about it systems.
So
they all have their charm.
So I know this is a reefing channel, and I apologize. This is going to be my first plug of the day. So I have a new video that I did with my reptiles, specifically outdoor. I have an outdoor enclosure. And the amount of crap that I put in that tank, I hope my wife doesn't watch this. I can't tell you how expensive it was, but for a small little lizard, he's got like the most ridiculous automation you could ever imagine in this tank, in this thing outside. I ran dedicated circuits to it from my attic. Okay, I ran water lines to it under the ground. Like we're talking ridiculousness. So yes, low tech is great, but that wouldn't make me happy. I would not be able to sleep at night.
You know what? My vivarium beside me that you guys can't see is my low tech. Like it has an automated mister. It has an overkill Radion freshwater to light it. And then I have a humidity / temp sensor inside. That's it. That's like the most simplest tank.
You have the humidity temp sensor I recommended, right?
I do. The sensor push is great.
Heck yeah, they're the greatest things on earth.
I actually have 4 of them now. I have them all over the place. I'm like, oh, one for here, one for there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're great.
But listen, excuse me, when I started with the same thing you're talking about, I was really low tech too. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have a misting system and a light, and I'm going to call it a day. But for some strange reason, this urge, like, I don't know what it is, something inside me said, listen, I'm going to pimp this thing out. And it's the same thing I do with my fish tanks, And it's interesting that all the stuff that I've done to my tanks, everything runs great. But when you leave on vacation, you get a lot of anxiety because you have all of this stuff running, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, You love
Okay.
it when you have it in your home, but when you
Yeah.
leave, you love it, you have it, but you're worried. I don't
Now,
know what it is.
okay. Now here's like the devil's advocate side of that. So on my tank, I was like, oh, I should turn off my alkalinity dosing rate when it overdosed. I should turn off my calc feeding. I should turn off my calcium reactor. All that stuff already turned itself off because I had programmed that, right? If elk's over
Right.
9, then off. If that's over 9, then off. So all my stuff turned off. And then, once I did my water change, knocked it down, I let it drop natural over 2 days. And then I went to go be like, oh, should I renable this? And, it turned itself back on once my elk was back in a happy range. So, I mean, having that also let the tank kind of correct itself after my stupidity of elk overdosing, right? So it does have its place as well to kind of self correct, providing you put in the effort and time to add those safeguards to the
Yeah,
programming, right?
with Kalkwasser, I dose calc. That's always a really big scare for me. Um, I'm probably the only one here, and probably the only one that's ever done this. But I have a solenoid on my calc output.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is a backup in case something else fails. Which
Wouldn't
is I'm a big proponent of that as well. Is
on the
having
feed line or the output
redundancies
line?
on the feed line. I
Okay.
have an extra solenoid there to kill whatever's going into the pump,
Yeah,
so it stops.
that's fair.
Because you don't want to overdose calc. Trust me,
I'm
that
so
will kill everything.
yeah, so for that, I feed mine with a Versa, and then I also have my pH probe. Or so either if my pH is too high, or if my alkalinity is too high, then it would turn off the outlet that feeds the Versa. So I have like multiple levels from that perspective.
Yeah, but let me ask you this: on your Versa pH probe, what system are you using?
No, that's the Versa's hooked up to a Neptune outlet. So it would be the Neptune. So if either the pH from the Neptune probe was too high, or the alkalinity from either auto tester is too high, then it would turn off kill power to the feed pump.
That's what I'm saying
Yeah.
because for me, unless you know some special trick, the highest you can go on a Neptune pH probe is 10.99
Yeah.
in
But
terms of getting an alert.
yeah, see, I just have it if my pH is ever above 8.4, then stop feeding calc. And it
Oh,
never is.
okay.
It's like 8.3 is the highest ever gets.
Oh, you're
So
talking. I'm sorry. You're talking about the pH of your tank. I was
yeah.
thinking the pH of the calc itself. Never
Oh
mind.
no, I don't care about that. I just drip at a very slow rate. That's not a big
Yeah,
deal
I
either.
yeah I have a definitely have a 8.45. I think I have a cutoff in
Yeah.
case, but I
I
have a solenoid just in case.
There you go. So okay, redundancies. Backup. That's another big one. It can save you from messing with your tank too much. Uh,
Hmm.
I dose enough calc to drown a medium-sized dog, and NOD or pH high. I can't evaporate enough to dose that much calc. I wish I could. I have two PC fans on my tank, and I still can't. I think I just have too many fish in my tank. It's too stocked. There's too much CO2 injecting itself. That and a calcium reactor. So that keeps mine from ever getting too crazy.
Yeah, I have a
But
calcium reactor too.
yeah,
I think over the last, what do you think, 2 years, calcium reactor and calc has become more popular together. I mean, I know it's been popular before, but I think more and more people are doing that
well,
now that the advancements in automation and so forth.
I think that's because the calc balances out some of the negative drop from the CO2 from calcium reactor, right?
Hmm.
So, fun fact, as I realized the other day, when I wasn't dosing for that day or two to let my elk drop back down, I was losing about 1.5 DKH a day. So that's like how much my tank sucks up. So actually, like one interesting one, because I know Chummingham's Reef Ryan, when I had him on a while back, he was dosing, he 100% supplemented his tank with kelp, which amazed me because he has a
Wow.
lot of coral. But when I actually saw it set up, he had fans bolted to the wall blowing at the tank. He had a tower fan in the hood above his tank. He was literally forcing as much evaporation as he could to basically shove in as
Oh,
much
okay. I'm seeing
calc
a
as he
lot of
could.
comments here about calc, and yeah, calc is super easy. I don't disagree with any of these comments. What I was saying, and I don't know if they're commenting on what I said, is if you were to accidentally dose calc into the tank at a rapid pace, accidentally again, it would be a nightmare for your tank. I'm not saying that you can overdose calc just by dripping it, because generally you won't. But if it was to all of a sudden just start going fast for no reason, or dosing completely, like all into the tank on an auto top off, for example, that's a huge disaster. So that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of calc with auto top off. I think that's
Me
not the
neither.
best plan.
Not at all.
Like use a consistent dosing pump, ideally something continuous duty if you're going to go that method. Versa pumps been working for a year or two now. Yeah, the Versas have been solid. For calc, it's actually one of my favorite pumps.
Hmm.
It's just
I have three
consistent,
verses
reliable.
now. After they finally came into stock, I got two more, and it's doing my automatic water changing between my two
Yep.
tanks. And I'm telling you, they're awesome and they're quiet.
Yeah.
I love them.
The only thing I will say, the one that I use for my calcium reactor, that one, it does seem to eat through the tubing a lot quicker. So every 3 or 4 months, I replace that one. But the ones I use for calc, everything else, they last ages and ages and ages. I get something about just the pH in the water from the tank going through it. Diamond Reef. Devin, did you lose any coral from the alkalinity swing? I have not. I'm amazed that being that my elk got to 14.8 from 7.8 so far. I mean, there's still possible that there could be some long-term follow, but so far everything is completely happy. I mean, I did that 50 gallon water change. Stuff look vibrant and happy the next day. They're probably as happy it got a big water change. I mean, it's possible there's trace elements I was lacking it got, who knows. But it's been very happy and I've not seen one sign of stress. So that makes me very happy. In a few weeks it's possible there may be some long-term fallout, but so far everything's looking awesome in the tank. So hopefully dodged a bullet there. Four
Yeah,
versus
I
running.
think you dodged a bullet, and I think that's awesome. I don't know what would have happened if that would have stayed at 14 for a longer period of time. 14 is pretty darn high.
14.8.
I think your acros would have been fine, but I think your softies would have had some trouble with.
Yeah.
That's a high alkalinity for them. He was saying I have 4 verses continuously running. Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah. I can't agree more. I love them, and they're super simple to program. My goodness.
And they're quiet. That's a big one for me.
I'm looking forward to Neptune coming out with that MXM that I have a feeling is going to be able to control those, and I think it's going to be cool.
I believe what I read, they said lights and pumps right away. I'm hoping that comes eventually though, because that would be really cool if you could.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Mobius, you would think it was just going to control everything. I mean, that's my hope.
Yep. Just recently started swapping the tubing every 4 months. Yeah, so the stuff that I run continuous duty, I'm roughly the same schedule for every 4 months. Stuff that I use is for dosing, like trace elements in small amounts. Like some of them are still in original tubing from a couple years ago because they don't get much wear and tear.
So how do you know when to replace the tubing on those?
You can just
curiosity.
Like you can see like if there's the calcium reactor one is the one I do the most because you'll see it will get like squished kind of and it'll get harder in the tubing. Basically, if you pop it open to see if it's nice and pliable or if it's starting to look a bit deformed, that's my kind of go-to. But calcium reactor, I'm going to say I do every 4 months. Calc reactor, I go a bit longer, but roughly 4 months is a good schedule. Just regular dosing ones, for me, they last ages and ages because they don't have much wear versus 24/7 with the rollers.
What's your thoughts? I haven't spoke to you about this. What's your thoughts on the new Coral View stuff coming out? What do you think?
I like that they're creating more stuff and get some good competition for everybody. I think it's pretty cool. The battery backup idea is kind of a cool idea. How can back up stuff? It would have been nicer if they did 24 volts as well for the battery backup. Now, part of me has like mixed opinions on this because from one part of me is like, oh, you can like get rid of power supplies. You only have one, but the other part of me is like, okay, you're down to 1 point of failure. Now, granted, they did use like a mean well power supply and like a very high quality one, which definitely goes a long way versus like a cheap China power supply. So kind of mix things on that one. But I think it's cool, a lot of the stuff they're coming out with for sure.
Yeah, I had them on last week.
Yep.
Or not last week. I had them on Monday. What am I saying? I had them on 2 days ago.
2 days ago? It's all a blur.
Yeah, it's all a blur.
Yeah.
It was a long stream, so yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, I mentioned pretty much everything. If you guys check that out, you'll see what I said. But the bottom line is, with the battery backup, the only thing I don't like is the fact that you have to use these acid, what are they?
Lead acid.
I don't know, nickel acid, I don't know, lead acid batteries. And for such a nice looking product, it's like, oh, now I'm gonna have these batteries sitting next to my tank.
I actually,
I don't
I,
know.
I actually asked them about that when they had it on. You can run other types of chemistry, you just can't charge it. So you could use like a lithium battery if you wanted, but they just won't
Okay.
charge it. So you could have your own charger on it and only have it draw from it if you were to go
Oh,
that route.
good.
And that's likely what
I
I would do
just
if I was too.
aesthetically, I didn't like that idea. I was a little concerned. I mean, I know a little bit about batteries, but I was concerned about water getting on the battery. Um, it's not an enclosed battery. It's so I don't know. That's the only thing I could say that I didn't like out of
That's fair.
everything they released.
Yeah. Their new like all I don't, was the crack in the battery or is the crack in the all-in-one? The all-in-one thing with like the built-in dosing pumps, everything is kind of a cool solution
That's
for
X10.
the X10. Yeah. If you had like a nano tank or something, like here's your dose pumps, here's everything all in one, I think it's kind of a cool solution from that perspective.
Hmm. I agree. I
Yeah.
thought that was something interesting that now you can get an all-in-one kit that basically does everything for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Dosers,
that you would
controller, all in one
technically
dealio.
need.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's kind of funky. Yeah. I like to see lots of new cool products coming out. I think it's great competition for like everyone in the industry and it keeps people innovating, keeps people on their toes. So I don't know. I like seeing new products. Makes me happy.
Oh yeah. Oh
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I didn't see a lot of stuff at Macna. Then again, I wasn't there.
Well,
But
that's why you
from
wouldn't see it.
well, from what I heard, there wasn't a lot of new stuff, unfortunately. Um, but you know, there was COVID, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I don't know. I think next year, hopefully, we'll get back to a normal phase. I haven't been to the shows in a year or two, but next year I think I can start going again. I miss them.
Wasn't that
They're fun.
Reefapalooza this weekend?
Yeah,
This weekend?
I think so.
Yeah, I can't
Uh,
go to that either.
yeah, yeah. In the chat, they were talking a little bit about being like the noise level of the tank, and I am OCD about having a super quiet tank. That is big for
Yes.
me, and it actually makes me happy because like a lot of time, if a non-reefer comes over, they're like, "Oh, is everything in there alive?" Reefer comes over, they're like, "It's so quiet." I'm like, "Thank you." Like
Yes.
I'm obsessed with making a quiet tank.
Yeah, my tank is super quiet because had to put a bunch of sound editing and everything.
Yeah.
But the only thing that's loud is my dose pumps, my Neptune dose. They're just so loud. Um, but everything else is super quiet. So,
So with the dose, they're awesome for dosing. But if you want to do an automatic water change, in my opinion, they're a little on the loud side.
a little. I mean, I can hear them from my living room, which is about 15 feet that way, and might even be able to hear them right now while
So
I'm
like I
here.
said, they're great for dosing, not so much for continuous duty, in my opinion.
I actually mentioned you on the stream because we were talking about how quiet are the pumps that come with them, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, if they're not quiet, Devin's not gonna buy them. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Yeah, it's quiet as big. Even with like some of them was interesting. Like one of the Comore pumps I had a long time ago, they had a high speed and a low speed mode. High speed was loud, low speed was quiet. It's like, why wouldn't you just dose slower and make it silent? I mean, I guess some people want to see, hear it. They're like, oh, I know it's working. But at the same time, I would rather just know. All right, Brandy, Elos Reef Manager. So Elos released a new one that basically doses based off weight rather than volume. Is a interesting way to do it. You claim you're
Wait,
into
what
tech,
is?
but then you run a 10-year-old dosing pump design. Which pump are you talking about, Jake? Um,
He's talking about the
excited,
dose.
probably.
I think he's talking about the dose. I
Yeah.
know he doesn't like Neptune products, so I understand.
Yeah, could be. So
Trust me,
depends.
trust me. I would like to put other dosers on there, but as
Hey,
as
I bet you
as you
any
know, Devin, and my viewers know, I've spent thousands of dollars on my Neptune system. I have 40 something modules. For me to just get up and get a new dosing pump that's integrated in my whole system, and I have what, 7 different doses. I just don't have the money. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So if someone wants to give me these pumps, then I will surely replace them.
Yeah, good luck. Now, that being said, maybe I'm really hoping that MXM module will eventually be able to control the Versas because I think that would be a sweet setup.
Absolutely. If that was the case, I probably would think about getting my dose replaced with Versus. I don't see why I would need the dose at that point.
Yeah.
Then I can have full control of them.
Well, there you go. Okay, so talking about battery backups, and a couple in the chat. Nico K, lithium phosphate with a BMS would let you use a lead acid charger, but it won't fully charge it because of any overcharging issues. So I did talk about this in a week or two ago. I still have been toying with the idea of doing like a full tank battery backup, which I think would be pretty awesome. Slightly overkill, but pretty awesome.
Yes, would be.
Not a cheap project. It'd be a few grand, but I think it would be pretty crazy to have the whole tank completely backed up. Power outage tank doesn't miss a beat. Realistically, flow's the main thing you care about, right? You don't necessarily need to run everything on your tank, but as long as you have flow, it's pretty good.
I I've been running all of my tanks on APC computer battery backups for years. Now I know everyone's saying, "Well, why are you doing that? You have DC pumps, blah 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 blah." You know, I've had them for so long. I've never replaced them. I've never touched them except for replacing the battery.
Okay,
And
good,
they
good. I was
give
gonna
me
say.
and they give me 45 minutes to 2 hours just to get the pumps running and just to get flow running. And I also have my skimmers on them now, and they've worked fine for me. I mean, it would be nice, like you said, to have a nice solution that will back up everything without having to go out and buy a generator. I would hope someone's out there thinking about, you know, a full battery backup solution for both AC and DC products, and that you could just plug them all in, and that's it.
Okay, so if I was gonna do it, what I was debating doing, if you actually use a hybrid solar inverter, they have really cool ones that are mainly made for off grid, but they can run off batteries, they can run off solar, they can run off the grid. You can use like a UPS so the grid charges the batteries. You can run a circuit off it, so you're pulling grid power, but it automatically swaps over to batteries if you lose power, which is how I'd probably do it, because then you basically have a massive UPS, right? Now,
Right.
that is not cheap. Like, someone I saw in the comments a minute ago where they're saying, they're in the generator camp. So generator's obviously better bang for your buck because, a decent generator is like $1,000, and you can probably run whatever you want to run with it. I have been debating that one too. If I did a generator though, I would personally do a natural gas one, so you don't have to worry about running to the gas station. You don't have to worry about storing gas, worry about adding fuel
Right.
stabilizers and going bad and all that jazz. Or if you have like a natural gas line in your house for a barbecue or something, plug it in, done, happy.
All day. Yeah, my natural gas is right next to my electrical panel, so it would take me
No.
2 seconds to install it.
Easy peasy. So I would go that route. Now, okay, I don't know where the 10-year-old phone comment came from. I have a 10-year-old phone. My mind's all that, but I do have some old school ones sitting beside me in reach. They still work.
I have something
They're
to say
sluggish,
about,
but
I
they
have
work.
something to say about that comment too.
What do you got?
I don't know if Jake just doesn't know me. He probably doesn't because I'm kind of small potatoes in this hobby. But I only buy the latest tech for every single thing. You can imagine I replace stuff on a consistent basis. I love new tech, so I know what he's saying. But you know what? Again, it all just comes down to money. When you have a working system that works, it's just I'm not going to go out and replace everything.
I don't know why I found this comical. So this is iPhone 13, whatever. Not the new one, whatever was out a year or two ago.
I have an iPhone 13.
But look at the 7. Look at the size of the camera difference. It's
Oh my
ridiculous.
god!
Oh, this is a 6 or 7, whatever. This is one of my old ones. But yeah, it's funny to see. Honestly, you're paying for like a faster camera these days. It's like we're all the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
So with the battery backup and generator comments, here in Arizona, I don't know how many people here are on the chat are from Arizona. My power has never went out since I've lived in this house for 20 years. So my power has never went out. I do have battery backups just in case. Generally, my battery backups, guys, are generally for my GFCI outlets in case they fail. But the actual power in the house here, I've never had it go out. So personally, I've never needed a generator, thank goodness. But I know if I lived in an area where power went out all the time, you better freaking believe it, I would have a generator. There
Yeah.
wouldn't even be a comment. I would have had it the minute I bought this house.
Yeah, fair. So, I don't, yeah, I get them once in a while, not very often. Okay, so how do I get Ecotech battery backup to work with feed mode, or if I want to turn them off? Yeah, if you're pulling power to the pump, it's obviously going to go into feed mode. If you hit feed mode via Mobius or ESL, whatever you're using, then the pump knows to just slow down. You know, if you're using something like an Apex, eventually that MXM module, I think it's called, then that will be able to communicate with them and do it that way. So I guess it depends.
Yeah, I think he was saying.
Cheers. Thank you.
I think he was saying something about the battery feed mode if you wanted them. I think you can't do that. You have. They're hooked up. Once they're hooked up with that feed wire, it automatically detects a battery if that's hooked up, right? That little plug
No.
that's in the. Is that what he's talking about?
Yeah. No, I would assume he's pulling power via like an Apex or something to kick him into feed mode. Now that being said, if you use Mobius and Apex, okay, yeah. So, Fjords, cheers, thank you for the super chat. Cheers to you, sir. If you're killing power to the pumps via Apex for feed mode, then it's automatically going to kick over to battery backup because that driver
Correct.
says, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's a power outage." If you use Mobius to kick feed
trick.
mode, then you could tell it what to do. I got one too. I'll let
Oh,
you
no.
go. No, wait. Now, what else you can do is if you were to kick off feed mode via Mobius, you could use power monitoring on the Apex to see when the power level drops to tell the rest of your tank is in feed mode. So that's a way around it.
Ooh,
Now,
that's a cool one. I have a
Thank you.
better one. Like that's a cool one
Okay.
too. Go ahead.
now, or you just wait a couple months and buy the MXM module, and you can control it all through the one app. Okay, what do you got?
Oh, mine's way better.
No, what do you got?
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
At Amazon, they have outlet-powered relays. Okay, I believe they're $4, and all they are is a little relay, and it turns off and on. Okay,
Mhm.
you take the wires, you take one of the wires from the battery backup, you cut it. Okay, one of the wires, you put it into the relay box, so it kills the connection from your battery backup, and you program that on an outlet. And all it basically does is when you turn off your pump, it kills the relay, which then turns off your battery backup feed to your pump.
I like it, but what about a real power outage? What about a real power outage? How does it know to kick on? Because it would still lose power, unless you're feeding your power bar with a.
Well, yeah, you'd have to feed the relay to a battery of some sort. Yeah, I mean you'd have to have the relay on a battery. But yes, I mean for a relay to be powered, guys, you could use a cell phone battery. I mean it doesn't need much power.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, that's what I
Undeveloped.
do.
My mind's still wrapping my head around this, but I'm halfway towards a solution to make this work when there's no power. Oh, this was another thought I had actually, because I was like, if I built a full tank battery backup to actually get longevity out of it, right? Like I don't need all 5 Radeons running. I could probably have 2 of them running or 3, right? But you could add in, if you plug in like the 12-volt adapter to an Apex, you can detect a power outage. And you could have a power outage
Correct.
mode and, you know, maybe turn off like, okay, you can be like, okay, UV, you don't need to be on. This, you don't need to be on. You could like tone down the equipment that's running so you could still run a full tank, but with less gear. And that was one
Yeah, you could
potential
plug it
solution I
all.
had.
You could plug your Apex power bar into like an APC like I do, and essentially do exactly what you were just saying, and it would tell you which outlets to turn off and on when you have a power outage.
Yeah. So,
And I do have a video on that too. But anyway,
yeah. It's, so the problem with the
I have to
generator.
go soon.
Yeah, I do got to go soon. I got a sushi date soon. So if you were to have a generator, which a lot of people do, the problem is unless you have a whole home generator, you got to be home to go start the generator, to turn it on, plug your tank and move it over, right? Unless you have like an automatic transfer switch, but you need like a gen rack or a whole home one to be automated, or you got to be there. Where a battery backup is instant, right? I mean, or maybe do a small battery backup into your stopgap until you're there to generate it. But it's other food for thought.
You know, I sell another thing. I sell battery backups for home theater equipment,
Yeah.
for equipment racks, and they're really good for aquarium products, especially since you can get different ones in different voltages. So you can get like a 24 volt or a 12 volt battery backup for a home theater system, and those work really well. I mean, they're extremely expensive, but they work really well.
Yeah. There's okay on the generator chat. This is on my wish list one day when I see in the store, but Costco gets one from Furman that's tri-fuel that can run on gas, natural gas, or propane, which I think is freaking amazing. It's like
That's
$400 more expensive off the website than in store. So it only shows up in store once or twice a year. But next time I actually see it in person, I'm going to get one for like a tank backup because I'm too cheap to spend the extra like $400 and order it was shipped off the website. But but if you're going to get a generator, like 100%, I don't know. I really like the idea that you can use tri-fuel, right? Or especially if you have natural gas or barbecue and stuff, because then gas goes bad, especially if you don't use it for years. And, if you're not swapping lawnmowers and stuff, like, to me, it just seems like
like I said,
good way to go.
A lot of people have their natural gas right next to their electrical panel. So
Yeah.
I think natural gas is the right way to go. Someone said Tesla power walls. I did look into those. They're really expensive.
Okay. This I've looked into this too. So this is for the hardcore. You understand electronics and you don't mind doing battery stuff, but for the price of less than half of the price of a Tesla Powerwall, you can build your own lithium iron phosphate battery with double the capacity. Then again, it's not as pretty and perfectly
Tesla,
certified on your wall and Tesla, but value for money, I've been hardcore digging into building my own battery, just buying the raw cells and wiring them together with a BMS, which it's not that hard, but you need some basic electronic skills, but it is substantially cheaper if you go that route. Okay, so I rant over. Okay, we do got to wrap her up in about 5 minutes because I have to roll pretty quick. Of terms of not messing up your tank from messing with it too much. What else you got? Any other good tips on that aspect?
No, we kind of went over exactly everything I wanted to talk about.
Yep.
Again, look for swings. Don't look at numbers. I think that's
Yep.
the biggest advice I can give you guys.
Yeah.
Look for swings, especially if you're a new reefer. Don't try to get that 8.4 pH. Just check your corals. Make sure if everything's coming out and happy, leave it be. I mean,
don't chase the numbers.
Honestly, that's what I can say.
Yeah. Like,
that's the biggest mistakes I made when I was a new reefer, and we're talking back in 2001 when I started doing reefing.
Yeah.
And trust me, I killed tons of coral because I kept chasing numbers.
One of my worst mistakes was that when I was early days was using too much GFO too fast and basically starving out all my acros.
That's a real big one. People do that all the time, and it creates dinos in your tank.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest lessons of my early days of reefing many moons ago.
Creates isn't the right word. They come out of the woodwork when there's no phosphates in the tank.
Yep. So definitely don't chase numbers. Keeping stuff stable within a range, I just kind of say is the biggest thing. Where for the most part, I don't care what a lot of the numbers are specifically. I just more care about the trends. And your audio's got really loud for a sec. But basically, look at the trends more than the actual number. If your tank's happy, keep stuff relatively stable. If it's tanking or going up or down, then, intervene. But otherwise, let things settle and don't mess with it.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right, guys, I do got to run, but thank you guys for hanging out on this Wednesday's live stream. If you want to check out Derrick's channel, it is linked in the description below. And if you have any other tips about how to not mess with your tank or mess it up, be sure to leave them in the comments below. All right, guys, have a good night.
See ya.